Pull up, grab the fuel nozzle, and get ready to fuel up on trends and strategies to grow your travel center business in this episode of The Truck Stops Here, brought to you by NATSO. Now, here's your host, Amy Toner.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Truck Stops Here. I'm your host, Amy Toner. You are listening to The Truck Stops Here, the NATSO Foundation's podcast. The NATSO Foundation is a research, education, and public outreach subsidiary of NATSO. The podcast is just one of the many educational tools the foundation creates. So I have a very special guest today, which is Darren Schulte. He's NATSO's Vice President of Membership. Hey, Darren.
Hi, Amy. How are you? Long time no chat.
I know, right? So, every once in a while I get a bug in my bonnet, or whatever the term is, to talk about something that I think Darren would talk about. And this one is New Year's resolutions. I kept reading everyone's great goals and their dreams and their New Year's resolutions. And I just thought, you know what, let's talk about those for Truck Stops. So when I think of New Year's resolutions, I think of sort of like two buckets, right? Like one is realigning your focus and the other one is dreaming big. So let's talk about those two. First, I want to talk about realigning your focus. So what back to basic goals should be on any truck stop or travel center operator's New Year's list?
Got it. So I might throw you a curveball on this one, and I put some thought to this question. And, certainly we want to be leaner, faster, listen to our customers, things that you have talked about for years, But I'm going to throw this one with the increased attention that theft is getting, not only in our space, but in the retail world just in general. I think, I know we need to go back to one of the basic things is get our shrink control programs in place. So what do I mean by that? In the last 7 or 8 weeks, I've been traveling, and I have noticed some things at locations that I think our listeners would be shocked at. Like, for example, easy access into the office with no control. Customers going to the back of the office, literally, and talking to people. People going to their back rooms, vendors going in and out of the back rooms, out of the office without, never being checked on, or at least being accompanied by a staff member. So for me, we all know that there's a big attention in the media and in our own stores about theft. We all are experiencing increased theft, whether it be in our stores itself or through fraudulent credit card schemes or whatever is the theft increase that you are experiencing. It could be where they're stealing fuel, or again, as I referenced, the fraudulent credit cards. But it all starts with back to basics. So, for example, are we doing daily checks of the lot? Are we doing regular checks of our pumps to see if they've been, compromised? Are we doing vendor check-in procedures and policies properly? Are we doing audits at odd hours of our registers? And are we doing those basic things that all of us, all the listeners, have heard before? The stuff that we've learned in manager and training classes right from the beginning, are we doing those basics? So that would be my number one resolution for a back to basic item is shrink, and loss prevention control.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's perfect. Like I said, I feel like New Year's is a time to be like, these are the things that are bubbling in my head. This is what I want to focus on. So that sounds great. And we certainly have a lot of resources on that. Okay, how about food? It seems to me that food services and offers are in sort of this transitional time. Do you think that travel center operators should make a New Year's resolution around food, their offerings? What do you think?
I do. Again, that is something you and I have spoke about in the past on some of the podcasts. And it's almost like maybe even a back to basic on that situation. What I mean by a back to basic is know who your customer is, and specifically related to food. There are definitely some trends in food that are moving forward that everybody can be participating in. But I think it's incredibly critical to have a successful food program. Part of it is who is shopping your store. And what I mean specifically is there are areas of the country where Indian food would be an incredible opportunity for our members to participate in. But we have a lot of folks that won't do that. So we have areas where there's a much larger increase in vegetarians. There's parts of the country, believe it or not, that based on their customer count, their customer demographic, specifically we're talking about professional drivers, that may be leaning towards more vegetarian food. And I think that is something we need to start really, truly embracing. And for an independent operator or a small operator, he or she truthfully has a huge advantage over a larger regional player or a chain when it comes to food opportunity. And that's because they can turn around on a dime. They can identify that this is an opportunity. And for a lot of our independent operators, they can become a food destination. We've talked about this for years. The 3 reasons anybody pulls over to a travel center or a truck stop is they need fuel for their truck, they need to use the restroom, or they need to eat something. And whether the trucks and the cars are powered by gasoline, peanut butter, or EV, electric, they still need a place to stop and use the restroom and to eat food. So I think, again, these new offerings, we are not, as an industry, we are not, how would you say, in a protected bubble when it comes to food offerings. If there are food trends that are doing really well in the rest of the United States, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be embracing that. And I can give you another small example. One of the members has shared with me that they do really well with like frozen ice, or they do really well with frozen drinks. And while I'm getting with that member, and I'm saying, so why don't you embrace that? You're telling me that your frozen drinks out of your machines are some of the best producing both profit and revenue for you. Why don't you increase that? Or why don't you, create a trough full of ice and put those frozen drinks in the front, so when customers are coming that are in a rush, they'll grab one? Or why don't you, during a hot summer day, take them out and offer them to truck drivers who are fueling? So those are, again, these different types of offerings that we see that are really being successful elsewhere. We should be embracing. We already do chicken. Chicken's a great seller. Korean chicken's been the bomb for a long time. Why aren't we embracing that? Butter chicken or chicken kebab. Again, a lot of us are already doing chicken. So how easy would it be to do something a little bit different? And again, we're not talking about adding tons and tons and tons of different menu items to your offering, but whatever you're doing already, in more than likely in some way is already touching those new offerings and trends that are out there.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. How about a technology related New Year's resolution? Can you hit me with one of those? Technology.
Yes, indeed. As we move towards paid parking as an industry, I think one of the areas that can really assist us, because if you are doing paid parking or reserved parking, it can be challenging in terms of from a human capital standpoint. And I think that's where we should, one of the things we should be embracing is automated gated systems for parking. And again, whether you want to charge for parking or not, that's ultimately up to the operator. But that is something I would certainly be looking into as an automated gated system, rather than trying to have a human being go out there and check on those things. So that's one technology related item that we should be looking at. And it is also one item that if you are indeed doing paid parking, you will have a very quick return on investment for that technology related investment for your business.
Okay. All right. So we talked about food, we talked about technology, we talked about the basics. What about the dream big one? So the world is your oyster. You can do whatever you want. You're the king of your domain. What's one big innovative change that you would put on your New Year's resolutions?
Well, this may cause some of our listeners, hopefully, not to spin off the road if they're listening it while they're driving down the road. So this is going to be shocking, but for truck stops late at night, I'd close them down. And this is what I would end up doing if it was up to me. From a labor standpoint and from a safety standpoint, a lot of our truck stops at night just don't have any volume whatsoever. And maybe it's from 9 p.m. to, say, 4 a.m. in the morning, or many of our truck stops have very, very, very little traffic on the weekends. They're busy during the day with gasoline customers, and then again, like the reference, maybe 8, 9 o'clock at night, they shut down. So if the world was my oyster, I would shut down my travel center. I would make sure my gasoline was still operating. I would make sure my diesel's still operating. Right. And then I would have an automated restroom outside for everyone to utilize if they needed to use the restroom. I'm not talking about porta potties. I'm talking about safe automated restrooms. Or if worse comes to worse, if they have to do porta potties, they do porta potties. I'd have a security officer on the lot just for safety. And then the food offerings would be automated retail. So if you wanted a cup of coffee, boom, you could get a cup of coffee out of the automated retail machine. If you wanted a soda, there'd be a vending machine. If you wanted a cellular charger, some items there. If you needed some medicine, some Tylenol, there would be a CVS automated. And then if you wanted a pizza, you could do pizza. And the reason I say this, and again, Amy, you've heard me say this many times before, those of us that travel a lot on planes, prior to COVID-19, we were not able to get anything to eat in the early mornings, or if our flights were late, there was nothing open because they wouldn't get staff there. It was pretty much a barren wasteland. Well, now when you go into an airport, it doesn't matter when you're arriving, whether it's domestic or international, there's all sorts of choices for folks, all sorts of choices. And that includes general merchandise, as I referenced, and medicine. And I think the next step for travel centers, again, to really think about how are we using our labor? Labor is so precious. And why are we wasting those labor dollars late at night when we don't even have any business at some of these locations? Why not redeploy that labor and put that labor back into the morning and just let automation technology take care of your customers? So that's my big innovative change for the year, at least to consider. If you're not doing any volume late at night, if you're not doing any volume on certain times, can you literally, quote unquote, shut your store down as far as humans and turn your location into an automated retail operation? That's my big innovative change.
I'll be sure to link the video that we did with NAMA, because there is some amazing automated retail out there that people clearly don't know about. So I think that's great, Darren.
And again, if you're in San Sebastian, Spain, believe it or not, you can see automated restrooms. If you're in Los Angeles, there's automated restrooms. If you're somewhere, overseas, often it's not uncommon to run into places you feel like a pizza. It's 2 a.m, everybody's closed. Well, guess what? There's a pizza machine in the hotel, and it's a vending machine. So
perfect. I love it. All right. So that's all for now, Darren, until I get another bee in my bonnet of something else I want to ask you. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
I always enjoyed, Amy. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thanks for listening to today's episode of The Truck Stops Here. You can find us online at natso.com/podcast. If you have any questions you'd like to answer on the podcast, or you want to be a guest, reach out to me at atoner@natso.com.
The Truck Stops Here was brought to you by NATSO, the association representing truck stops and travel centers. Visit natso.com for more information. The Truck Stops Here is produced by NATSO in collaboration with Human Factor. Producers are Amy Toner and Darren Schulte.